Welcome to the AxeCast podcast. Conversations with interesting people from the world of Acadia athletics and more, talking about their lives, successes, and failures. And now let's join hosts Glenn Hawley and Eric Cederberg for the next 15 to 20 minutes as they dive into the life of today's guest.
This week on our AxeCast, we're joined by a 5-year former Acadia Axeman football player who went on to do some great things away from the gridiron. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. Really pleased to have Danny Frame with us this week. Danny, how are you doing?
You know, all things considering with what's going on in our province and around the world, pretty decent. So happy to be here and see you guys. It's been a while.
You know what? You've been away from Acadia. It's hard to believe 2 decades. Does it feel like 20 years has gone by?
No. Some days it seems like it was just yesterday. And then I'm actually turning 42 in a few weeks, and put it in perspective, it's really been that long. But you know, when time's busy, things get away from you, but you know, this time of this type of stuff that's going on, you get an opportunity to reflect on some of those things, and you know, just talking to my kids and some friends and realizing, wow, like 20 years, it's been a while, but you know, it's been 20 years packed with a lot of stuff too.
It's crazy, you know, because I was just thinking myself as I'm kind of looking through some different things that Danny Frame was once when I coached football, was a player playing for the team at that time. So I just like, wow, I haven't coached football in 20 years. So it's crazy the way time is flying by. And you look as though you haven't aged a year, Danny Frame.
If you look close, I got a few gray hairs and the old goatee, but other than that, I think I'm doing okay. Thank you, though.
So, some perspective on your arrival to Acadia, which would have been around the mid-'90s. You're from Shubenacadie. How did your path end up taking you to Wolfville?
1995, I went to a Legion leadership camp in Wolfville. Really loved the campus of Acadia, and I applied to a few schools in grade 12, St. FX, St. Thomas, and Acadia. I got into all 3, and I would say the Legion leadership camp was the final say of going there, and was really looking forward to, you know, starting my university career to eventually become a teacher. I knew I wanted to become that, and so set foot on campus in 1996, the fall of 96.
And Danny Frame is one of several athletes I recall when I was coaching who had very little to no experience of football. So what made you decide I'm going to try playing football?
I had a teacher in grade 12, Rob Adams. He had played volleyball and soccer at Dow. He's like, listen, you're not going to play basketball at 6'2", 270 or soccer. So you should look at playing football. I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. And then I lived in Eaton House, and on my floor there were, I'd say, a dozen football players. And I got to know some of them quite well, and still good friends with them, a lot of them to this day. And they're like, you should come down and try out. I'm like, yeah, maybe. And then Steve Asapis actually caught me working out in the Eaton residence after curfew once. I didn't know there was a curfew, and he's like, who are you? I'm like, I'm Danny Frame. He goes, no, but who are you? I'm like, I'm Danny Frame. He goes, why haven't I seen you before? I'm like, I just started working out. He goes, well, you should be in the football office. So he's like, come down, and went down and met the coaches, and that's where it all started. So I'd be like winter camp of 97 when I first started, you know, the football sort of train ride.
Yeah.
You're not the first Axeman, and I think of Bruce Beaton, who didn't have football experience, you know, prior to coming to Acadia. What is it about the sport of football? So to put it in perspective, you know, at 17 or 18 years old, and you come to university and say, well, you know, I think I'm going to play hockey and throw on a pair of skates, and you've never played the sport before, it's not going to work out. What differentiates football from a lot of other sports that you can transition and play at a high level, which we'll talk about here?
I think there's a position for every body type and every ability. So I played offensive line, a little bit of defensive line. That's where Sedzi coached me there a little bit. And I see offensive line plays basically playing post defense in basketball. You got to shuffle your feet and move your feet. You can't let somebody get past you. The only difference is you're allowed to hit them with your hands in football. So there's a huge advantage there. So But whether you're 300 pounds and 6'6", or you're 185 pounds and 5'10", there's a position for anywhere of any ability and any size, shape on a football field. And, you know, a lot of us have grown up running around. Yeah, skates would be, I wouldn't make a novice hockey team right now, Len, to be honest, but, you know, running around on a field, if you can't catch well, you can play DB if you can run fast. So there's just a spot for teams for anybody.
Talk about those early few days. So you arrive in the football office, you've been convinced to try out for the team. What was that like, not having really played the sport at a high level? If you even touched a football before Acadia, I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, I touched the football, but, you know, you're going against guys that have been playing for years. You know, some of them have played junior college or, you know, saged up ahead of time and have been lifting weights for a long time. I never lifted weights until I got to Acadia, but, you know, I worked on farms, so I had some good farm strength, and I was involved in lots of sports, and, you know, a little intimidating, to be honest, going into that locker room for the first time, but it was a good core group of people. So on the offensive line, at that point, we had Greg Woodbeck, Woody, and Chris Colson and Brent Weir, and a lot of guys that were competitive but were willing to help bring you along and believe in the team process. So I think, and that was encouraged from the top down, so from the coaching staff to the veteran players to the young players, and it makes it a really easy environment to grow in when people want to see the best for the group. And if the best for the group is to bring everybody up, then it makes it quite easy that way.
When you look back at those, again, early days at Acadia playing for the football team, and I know you mentioned from the top down, but is there one or two players that you look back and go, like, this guy was a real mentor for me?
A big one for me would be Trenton Simmons. So Trenton came from the same sort of background. He went to Cornwallis, which is now combined to make KCA. And, you know, he saw a lot of him and me and sort of took me under his wing, which was kind of nice. But I mean, even in Brent Weir and Colson and Woody, like those guys, they all stepped up. But I'd say Trenton, just because we had a very similar background.
Obviously, you know, it was the right decision to play the sport because you had great success. You won a championship in 1998 with the football team. You played for 5 years and a lot of personal accolades. Talk about your commitment to the sport and how you were able to become an all-star.
I've always been a pretty goal-driven person, and work ethic that came from my family. My parents were always they're all about us being active, but they wanted us to just work hard and do the best that we could. And they were so supportive in that. And, you know, year by year, got a little bit better and learned a skill set. And my first year I was an offensive lineman. My second year I went to defensive line and then went back to offensive line. I think that was sort of the aha moment for me. So now I fully understood what the other side of the ball was trying to do in those particular moments. And it's hard to teach a kid that really doesn't have much experience during the season. So I took a lot of pride in working super, super hard in the winter as well, because that's when I was going to gain all those little skill sets that were going to help once the season started. Not that coaches couldn't take you aside one-to-one some during the season, but, you know, there was a big, you know, job to do, which was try to win a championship. And then, you know, just hitting the weights more and getting more familiar by watching a lot of film. Lee Barrett and I used to watch a lot of film, the offensive coordinator at Acadia in the late 90s, and, you know, just learning the game. So as big and physical and talented as you can be, if you don't know the playbook and don't know what you're doing on the field, you're not going to be very successful.
Acadia Athletics stands on the pillars of athletics, academics, and community. And you look back at your career, I mean, you know, we often say in athletics, you stand on the shoulders of those that came before you. And you think about you being a nominee for the James Bear Award as a top student athlete in Atlantic Canada and receiving the Acadia Citizenship Award for community service. It really speaks to what Acadia is all about. You were more than just a football player at Acadia.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Coach Wolf and the coaching staff made sure that we were student athletes first and foremost. We weren't athletic students, so you take care of stuff in the classroom and you give back, you know, whether it's small or big, so whether it's Smile or the Alzheimer's Drive or going to talk to schools. And, you know, because we were role models and mentors to many others, not just on the campus, but in the community. And we were big fish in a small pond, and it was all about the culture of not just Acadia but Wolfville in general. So love doing that. I still love giving back to the communities and going to give talks and helping out wherever I can, because I look at where would I be without people giving their time to me. And I definitely wouldn't be sitting here talking about 2 decades ago playing at a high level of football, or when we talk about Highland Games a bit, like, so giving back and being selfless that way is what it is. And I found like the football team and the staff really wanted to make sure that the players not only played football, but we were the full circle of a student athlete while in Wolfville.
So as a person who knows your athletic abilities, from coaching you, being around you as a player, knowing the explosiveness you had, quick feet, which we always spoke about, you didn't get picked up in the CFL draft, but you sure as hell made it there, didn't you?
Yeah, I had a chance to do some stuff, and I wanted to finish my education degree though, and didn't look at the draft as fully as maybe I should have, and Winnipeg had my rights. Then after my final year, Toronto traded for my rights, and Paul Masadi gave me a call during spring break. I was actually in Acadia. I was using the washroom, and my old friend, may rest in peace, Kristen Pipe, was at my house, and he's like, "Hey, there's a phone call for you." I'm like, "What are you doing answering the phone?" He said, "Well, nobody's here." I said, "Okay, well, just give me a minute." He goes, No, you want to take this call right now.
That sounds like Pipe.
Yeah, just very direct. I was like, "Okay, just seriously, give me a second." So it was Masadi, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to come play?" And I was like, "Absolutely." Run around the field, get paid to hit people. It's kind of a cool gig. So signed in February of 2003, and worked hard, but wanted to finish my ed degree, obviously. But just a lot of time and focus going into that. Worked with Bruce Beaton, who was a many-year CFL player and AllStar, and played at Acadia as well. Walk on, no experience prior to as well. And just really set focus on being ready for camp and making the best of it. A farmer from Acadia.
So sorry, Eric, you even had to work out in the NFL.
Yeah, Arizona came and worked out myself and Karim Grant and Jermaine Romans, and I think it was January of 2001. So we did a few tests for them. That was kind of cool, and it was the first time I was ever exposed to the hand test, and like the width of your hand and those kind of things. And now that I watch the NFL combines, all the little things that they test is quite interesting. But yeah, it was kind of cool to just have somebody come up and work you out. And never again, leaving grade 12, didn't think that I would be having any interest in football really. So yeah, it was really, really cool.
So I'm going to lead into this next question there, Lenny. He's got he and another player, Jamie Pepper, both have probably the most explosive takeoffs I've seen. Are obsessed with lifting weights and getting stronger. And they both just a little bit, and they both decide, I don't know, around the same time. Maybe Jamie started first into the Highland Games, and you followed suit.
Yeah.
A new obsession, I guess, eh?
It was. So when Bruce and I used to train, he's like, "Hey, you got to meet my buddy Jamie Pepper. He owns a gym in Middleton. He played football at Acadia. He was a high-level hockey player, rugby player. And when your football career is done, you should really think about doing strength sports like strongman and Highland Games." I'm like, "Okay, that'd be kind of neat." And when we were training in our off season, I met Jamie in 2005, just before I headed to Winnipeg. And we hit it off, and had a lot of common interests with sports backgrounds and just education and everything. And once football was over, I competed in some strongman, did pretty well. I went to North Americans and did a Canada versus Iceland, so did some international shows. And it was a July day, I believe, in 2007. I was like, "Hey, Jake, do you want to show me how to do this Highland Games thing?" He goes, "Yeah, do you got time right now?" He goes, "Sure." So we went up to the back of the gym for 2 hours, and he taught me every event in 2 hours. And he said, "What do you think?" I was like, "That was pretty cool." He goes, "Awesome. You have a few days to find a kilt. You're going to compete in Halifax on Saturday." I was like, "What?" He said, "Yeah, you'll be fine. But you need a kilt." So He said, I'll be there at 9:30. It starts at 11. I'll introduce you to everybody and they'll let you throw. He shows up at like 20 to 11. So, and I'm just this random dude standing there with like a kit bag and everybody's staring at me like Craig Herford, a former Acadia alum, just like, who's this guy? Like nobody knows. And he just shows up. He goes, this is Framer. He's going to throw today. And they're like, oh, okay. So yeah, that sort of kickstarted that. And, you know, really fell in love with it. It's a great way to compete and stay focused on my training. I mean, I'd still train anyways, but it just gives me a more sense of purpose to lift heavy things and put my body through what I put it through.
and here you're putting what was it like to toss for the first time? You're standing there in a kilt.
Well, and it was in Halifax on the Garrison grounds, and I wish I could get that adrenaline back, Len. It was probably the best adrenaline I've had, and I threw it was the Braemar stone. It was like a 24-pound stone. I threw it like 38 feet, and I couldn't beat that number for like 2 years because I was super, super pumped. The rest of the day didn't go as great, but I was able to flip the caber. But just being part of that sort of the culture and the atmosphere and like the bagpipes in the background, they don't get annoying all the time. And seeing the dancers, it was just a cool sort of, it was just a really great culture. Like Strawman's a little different. It's definitely more, I don't even know, not as friendly, I guess, where I find Highland Games are much more historic and family friendly and it's worldwide too. So yeah.
I know for a while when I was living in Middleton, the Highland Games were in Middleton, and obviously Jake was very much. Do they still have the Highland Games in Middleton anymore?
We had one up until around 2013, and then we didn't for a few years. And now our school, Lawrencetown Education Center, we've hosted a few in September. So we had one last year in September, and I think the 2 previous Septembers. So we and then we link it to we do Gaelic studies. So Dave Ross, he teaches Gaelic studies in the high school, and you know, students can obtain a lot of the curriculum outcomes by putting on a Highland gathering, which is fantastic. And it's great for the community too, and it's great to showcase some of the local athletes, and we get some of the students and some of the young people to throw as well, because in order for a sport like that to continue, you have to get youth involved. I mean, I didn't know about until I was close to 30. Would have been great to know at a younger age. So the more we can expose young people to it, the more opportunity to have people, you know, doing it for a long time.
Yeah, all that success with the Highland Games, and then, you know, maritime, national, international, culminated with you getting into the Guinness Book of World Records. You've got to take us back, 2 years, 3 years here, Danny?
Yeah, so I guess a quick Coles notes is when I was in grade 4, I bought a Guinness book for the first time and said, this is the coolest thing ever. I want to get into this. But I knew I wasn't going to grow like super long hair or fingernails. So I was like, again, what could somebody like me do? And then I think it was 2014 or 15, I went to Fergus, Ontario. And they had a group Guinness record for caber tossing. Like, what? Like, you can get in the Guinness record for caber tossing. So I was part of a group record, but I was like, that's not cool enough. Like, I was one of 70 people. And then I did some research, and sure enough, you could flip as many cabers as you could in 3 minutes. And I was like, I'm going to take this on. So yeah, July 20th of 2018, I took the record on at Heart of the Valley, because, you know, Middleton was where my strength career in terms of strength athletics, individual strength athletics started. And it was a warm night and was able to get the record. And it was great to have, you know, a lot of friends and family, and my students were there. And I was fighting a bit of an injury, but I was just like, the show must go on. And I just wore those green elastic exercise bands around my hips just to make sure everything stayed together. And yeah, so it was cool. And then Guinness wrote me and said, if you want to be in the book, send a picture and reasons why you should be in the book. And I was fortunate enough to make it. And they even told me that, you know, not many people make it in, let alone their picture. So you should, because there's thousands and thousands of records. And in the meantime, I've set another record, a dual record, with a buddy of mine from New Brunswick. And I was planning to do another one this summer, but because of, you know, COVID, it's going to be on the back shelf. But it's kind of addictive. It's, you know, hey, can I get another one? And as long as my body can withstand it, I'm probably going to keep doing it.
Yeah. Do you have any Scottish blood in you?
Yeah. Frames came from Scotland, and then they
Good.
They went to Ireland,
Right.
and then over. And then my mom's side was McLean, so very Scottish.
I got a question for Lenny. Can you flip a caber in 3 minutes? Just once, Lenny. Can you do it? No. No, there's times where I just watched you guys and I'm tempted to go out and say, okay, show me this, but I'm thinking, nah, it's not going to
Hey,
happen.
listen, my arms are probably the size of Danny's fingers, so yeah.
Well, and that's the problem, though, is that some people see us do it and they think they make it look easy. But, you know, like Jake, he was one of the best in the world, and he's who taught me. And, you know, you learn the tricks of the trade, and it's like a science to him. So he's like, it doesn't matter if you can pick it, you got to be able to control it before you flip it. And I remember him making me do these long walks and then put your foot up on this and then karaoke over another caber, so you have full control of this 20-foot pole above you. And but yeah, like a lot of people in the crowd, they'll come out like, oh, that looks pretty easy. And meanwhile, it's 20 pounds and 120 or 20 feet, 120 pounds over your head. You don't know where the top of it is. And yeah, not a good drunken dare, that's for sure.
Nope.
No.
And now it's time for Eric's Cut to the Chase 5 questions.
I'm going to fire some tough ones on
I'm
you.
going to throw some questions at you there, Danny. And you know what? They may just be totally different than what I tried to give you a heads up on. So
Okay, no worries.
I like to just kind of fish people in a bit and then let them go. What would you consider your greatest accomplishment? What a stupid question. But I'm going to ask you because maybe it's not a world record.
It's not. Athletic accomplishment, probably the world record. Actually, there's a lot. I'd say team stuff is just going out for football and all the things I've done. Individually would be the world record, but having my two boys, William and Wyatt, you know, they're awesome. And being their father is fantastic. They're 5 and 3. They'll be future Axemen, I think.
Right.
He's 4 feet and 62 pounds. He's 5.
Nice.
And Wyatt's 42 pounds. He's 3. So we're going to start getting them ready.
Like that. Let's see. If you were commissioner for a day, so you're the commissioner of, I don't know, of the world, what rule would you impose?
Oh.
I don't know if I wanted to ask this.
Well, with all the things going on right now, just be kind. It's not that hard.
It's that easy, man. It really is. It's like, holy gosh.
Yeah.
If you could be head coach of a team, what team is that going to be? Any sport? What team would you want to be head coach of?
Well, I think probably a dodgeball team.
Right.
They can make a sequel, and maybe maybe I would go against Vince Vaughn. Maybe he would become the new Patches O'Houlihan, and we'd be on the Doyo 7.
I like that.
Yeah, it's intense. Like the fact that those guys are on ESPN playing is awesome, and to be less pressure, I think, with dodgeball.
True. It's a growing sport. It's, you can, right.
Yeah.
What's the most scared you've ever been? Like, what's the most terrifying time of your life? Like, holy gosh.
Almost crapped my pants on this one. I was biking home from working on a farm and wasn't wearing a helmet, and looked across the road and then looked again and started crossing, and there was a car coming. I could hear the people screaming in the car. They were speeding, but still I should have looked. And the adrenaline, whatever, and all I remember is hitting the pedal at the right time and went across. And my dad was in the garage, and my dad, he's my number one. And I went up there and I'm like, oh my God, hopefully he didn't see that. And he's playing all, hey, how was the work? I'm like, good. And I'm like, oh, he didn't see it. He goes, don't think I didn't see that. It just made me like, oh. And then he's like, what were you thinking? And yeah, but I almost dying. And then I think I was more worried about what my dad was going to say. So yeah, I'll never forget that. I get kind of like butterflies thinking about it right now.
So what was more scary, your father or almost getting hit with the car?
Definitely his reaction at that moment. But looking back, it should have been the car.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think I'd win against that.
Last question here.
Okay.
If you have 3 words that describe Danny Frame.
Ooh. Well, I would say number 1 is sarcastic. Right. Some people enjoy my sarcasm. Some people realize I'm just sarcastic and not an a-hole. And after a while, number 2, I think they'd say I'm motivated. whether it's, you know, fatherhood or being a friend or a teacher or with my training. And I'd say the last thing would be selfless. I think I'm somebody that gives back. You know, I just had a young kid, Derek Smith. He's from Middleton as well. He's a world champion powerlifter and a Canadian champion Highland Games. So he just dropped some weights off to me that I'd lent him. And, you know, it's great. He wasn't sure what to do when he was younger. Somebody took him under his wing, and, you know, people are like, what happens if he ever beats your records? I'm like, good, because it means I've done something right. And, you know, like I said before, I look back and think if people didn't give me time, what would I be doing? And that's what it's all about. And part of that is, again, with the Acadia culture and what Coach Wolf and the crew instilled in me is, you know, you give back. You're much, you know, you're a big fish, but you're nowhere near as big as the opportunity that you have to give back and helps not just one person, but just everybody. Like it doesn't take much. And who am I to say that I can't help somebody because of what I've done? I should be helping more people with my experiences.
Well, the world would be a better place, Danny, if there's more of you, I guess.
Well,
and less of Lenny's.
Whoa. Ouch. Shots fired.
You should know that you got to have thick skin to be around.
Better be.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, listen, this has been great. So glad to have you on the AxeCast this week. And those words, you know what, couldn't argue with any of them. And the one thing is that, you know, it's not a word, but you're not afraid. And you weren't afraid to try football. You weren't afraid to try Highland Games and caber tossing and everything like that. And you've been very successful at it. So motivated is a great word. And Danny, appreciate you doing this. Thanks for all you do in your community. Thanks for all you do for Acadia. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys. Good to see you.